Going to do right now is I'm going to talk over the Unit 1 Quiz 1 review with you. So this will actually help you with the quiz because it's going to be identical to the quiz. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 1. So we're solving for x. So the first thing we want to do is distribute in that 3. So I'm going to multiply each of those by 3. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is going to be 6. So there I have 3x plus 6 is going to be equal to 9. So the first thing I want to do is get that plus 6 over to the other side. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So 3x is equal to 9 minus 6, which is 3. Now that 3 is being multiplied by the x. So to get it over to the other side, we need to do the opposite, which is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I get x is equal to 1. Now let's take a look at number 2. So for number 2, we want to get our x's on the same side. So what I like to do is I like to take the smaller amount of x's and bring it over to the other side. But it actually doesn't matter which way you choose. So I'm going to take this 2x and bring it over to the other side. Now, remember that that's a positive 2x. So to get it over to the other side, I actually have to subtract 2x from both sides. So then I get negative 5 is less than or equal to 5 minus 2x, which is 3x, and then that's going to be plus 7. So now I need to get that plus 7 over to the other side, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 7. Well, negative 5 minus 7, that's kind of like adding those two numbers, so that's going to be a negative 12, and that's going to be less than or equal to 3 times x. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Since I'm dividing by a positive number, I'm not going to flip my symbol. So I'm going to still have x on that side. Negative 12 divided by 3 is going to be a negative 4. So this is your final answer. All I want you guys to do is solve it. You don't have to actually graph it. Now let's take a look at this next one. What we're doing on number 5 is we're taking words and putting it into an equation. So I have 6 is less than a number is 3. So I'm going to let x represent that number. So I have 6 less than a number, so I'm going to subtract it, is going to be equal to 3. Now notice that the directions also ask you to solve it. So you have to solve for x. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 6 from both sides. So I get negative x is equal to 3 minus 6, which is negative 3. Oops, I'm sorry, I screwed that up. That was my fault. 6 less than a number. So if our number is x, we're subtracting 6 off of it. That was my fault. I screwed that up. So x minus 6 is equal to 3. So now we're going to go ahead and add 6 to both sides. So that's going to be equal to 9. So the reason why I did that wrong is it says that 6 is less than the number. So we need to take our number and subtract 6 from it. So I apologize if that was confusing. Let's take a look at number 4. The quotient of a number and 3 is less than 8. So quotient, well, that means to divide. So we're going to take our number and divide 3, and that, whatever it is, needs to be less than 8. So here I'm going to ask myself, what's the opposite of dividing? Well, that's going to be multiplying. So I need to multiply both sides by 3. And when I do that, that cancels out. So I have x left on this side. And 8 times 3 is 24. So my final answer for number 4 is that x is less than 24. Let's take a look at number 5. The discharge of the river equals the product of its width, average depth, and its speed. So its width, its average depth, and its speed. And product means multiply. And that's going to equal the discharge, which I'll just represent with I. Okay, so at one location, the Mississippi River, okay, it's 413 meters wide. Well, that's going to be my W. Its speed is 0.65 meters per second. That's going to be my S. And the discharge is 1,376. Well, that's going to be my I. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. So I have 1,376. And that's going to be equal to my width times my depth, which I don't know, so I will leave as D, times my speed, which is 0.65. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and multiply 413 times 0.65. And when I do that, I end up getting 268.45, and that's going to be multiplied times D. Well, since it's going to be multiplied, I need to go ahead and divide both sides by 268.45. So then D is going to be equal to 1,376 divided by 268.45. And that's going to give you 5.13 meters. So that's your final answer for number 5. Let's take a look at number 6. So it says on July 20th, Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon. The moon, his suit, and life support weighed about 34 pounds. So 34 pounds represents his weight on the moon. An item's weight on the moon is about 1/6 of its weight on Earth. So I'm going to let X represent the weight on Earth. So how much it weighs on Earth. So if we're on the moon, how much we weigh on Earth, it's going to be 1/6 of our weight on Earth. So I'm going to write it like that. Now for Neil Armstrong, his moon weight was 34. So now we need to solve this to get our moon weight. Well, actually, 1/6 is really the same as X divided by 6 is equal to 34. Well, the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. And then I end up getting 204. And I'm going to label it pounds, which you can do LBS or you can write out pounds. So that's how much he's going to weigh on Earth if he weighs 34 pounds on the moon. All right, next, let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 7. So here we're going to graph. Now remember that this number right here that's being added is where we're crossing the y-axis. So we're crossing the y-axis at 1, which is right here. My slope is going to be 3, which is the same as 3 over 1. So what we're doing is we're going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and graph that line. So I'm going to connect the dots. Hopefully you can draw a lot straighter lines than I can. Take a look at number 8. Let's go ahead and let's put that into slope-intercept form. Now remember that slope-intercept form is y is equal to mx plus b. So y is equal to, my y-intercept is -2, so that's what I'm plugging in for b. Then my slope is 1/3. So here's the equation that I'm graphing. So I'm crossing the y-axis at a -2. So the y-axis is this up and down one, and I'm crossing it at -2. And then I'm going up 1 and over 1, 2, 3 from that point and plotting that point. And again, we're going to go ahead and connect the dots. That was a little bit of a straighter line. I'm getting better. Okay, so let's take a look at number 6. Write the equation in point-slope form. So point-slope form is the one that's like a puzzle, like so. Okay, opposite of the y-coordinate here, slope here, opposite of the x-coordinate here. So we're plugging in our slope here. Then we want to do the opposite of the x-coordinate. Well, since it's a -4, I'm going to write it as +4. And then the opposite of a positive one is going to be -1. So this right here is the slope-intercept form. Taking a look at number 10. Okay, we want to first find the slope. So this is something you're going to want to remember on the quiz. So to calculate out the slope, whenever you have 2 points, the first thing you want to do is calculate out the slope. And you do that by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. So now we're going to go ahead and solve that. So y2 is 10 minus y1, which is 7, over x2, which is 7, minus x1, which is 4. 10 minus 7 is 3. 7 minus 4 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is equal to 1. So now I know my slope is 1. And now we can put it into point-slope form. And guess what? It doesn't matter which of the points you choose to put it in point-slope form. Let's put both in just for practice. So for the first one, you do this. On your quiz, you only have to do one of the two. So in here, we're going to put 1. So we're going to use the 0.47 for this first one. Opposite of the x-coordinate is going to be -4. Opposite of the y-coordinate is going to be -7. So that's one answer you could give. Another option would be if we use the 0.710. So we're going to go ahead and set up our puzzle. Our slope is still going to be 1. In here, opposite of our x-coordinate, so that's going to be -7. In here, opposite of our y-coordinate, which is going to be -10. So that is your point-slope form, and you could have used either of those for an answer. Now let's take a look at number 11. So when you write things in standard form, it needs to be in this form. ax plus by is equal to c. So you want your x's and y's on one side and your thing that's just a number on the other side. So we're pretty close on number 11. The only thing we need to do is get that 2x over to the other side. So since that's a positive 2x, to get it over to the other side, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I get 2x plus y. Now those two cannot be added together because there's an x and a y. And notice that this is a minus 7. So that's actually going to be equal to a negative 7. Make sure you're not dropping that negative. And that's all there is to it. That is your standard form right there. Now, taking a look at number 12, we need to get this thing that's just a number over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides. So I get 3x minus 8y is equal to 5 minus 1, which is 4. So my x's and y's are on one side, and my thing that's just a number is on the other. So that concludes your quiz review. Take a second, look it over, make sure you understand how to do everything. If you don't, let me know. Let's talk through it. This is identical to your quiz with different numbers. So if you can't do number 3 on here, you can't do it on the quiz. So make sure you're ready to go, and then go ahead and hand it to me when you're done, and I will give you your quiz. Thanks for listening.